Hi, welcome to the last video lecture of the semester, the last chapter of your criminal law class. So chapter 13 is all about crimes against the state, primarily the federal government. When we say state here, not like state of Indiana. And we're going to be really definition heavy this semester because these crimes are really not that common, but I don't think you'll really get them anywhere else in the curriculum, so we want to spend a little bit of time talking about what they mean. And so the first crime that we're going to talk about is treason. Okay. So the definition of treason is levying war against the United States or of giving aid and comfort to its enemies. Treason is the only crime defined in the body of the Constitution or the amendments to the Constitution. It's defined in Article 3, Section 3, if you want to go look it up. And it defines it as treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. No person shall be convicted of treason unless on the testimony of two witnesses to the same overt act or on confession in open court. In 2006, we had a treason statute passed. It's in the United States Code. It's called the Treason Act of 2006, if you wanted to look that up. And it provides the constitutional definition of treason and then adds in punishment options for treason. So it adds in that someone who's guilty of treason shall suffer death or shall be imprisoned not less than 5 years and fined under this title but not less than $10,000 and shall be incapable of holding any office under the United States. So that is kind of what the punishment looks like. It's 5 years to death. It has to be a fine of more than $10,000. You can never hold public office again. So here are the elements of the crime of treason. And so these elements, the actus reus is one or more overt acts of levying war against the United States or giving aid and comfort to the enemies of the United States. The overt act requirement, again, is really important to just kind of a general principle of criminal law. And we didn't want people to be convicted or fear a crime of treason just for less actions. This is supposed to be very serious. Giving aid and comfort to the enemy is kind of similar to adherence to the enemy, which was kind of looking at like breaking your allegiance to your country in favor of another country. So those are the kinds of things we're looking for here. The mens rea is the intent to commit an act of levying war against the United States or the intent to give aid and comfort to the enemy of the United States, and you have the ultimate goal of betraying the United States. Now, treason has a circumstance element. We have to have proof by two witnesses to one overt act or a confession in open court to equal the criminal harm, the criminal conduct of treason. This is pretty heightened because we want only to punish those who really have committed this crime. It's one of the most serious crimes in our entire country. And for that reason, the standard is really, really high to charge somebody with treason. It's really serious. It's really hard to reach. Now, again, just throughout our entire national history, the country has only charged about 30 people with treason, so very small number. And the only people who have been, my understanding is the only people who have been put to death were Ethel Rosenberg after and her husband Julius Rosenberg, and they were executed in the early 1950s for providing help to Nazi Germany. Otherwise, past U.S. presidents have either pardoned those who've been convicted of treason or commuted their sentence from death, so to life in prison or some lesser term of imprisonment. So extremely rare, only about 30 people in our entire history. Let's see. So this is a little bit about the history of it and what it means, but we've talked a little bit about that. So our next few crimes are called sedition, sabotage, and espionage. So sedition is the act of advocating the violent overthrow of the government. Sedition, like the stirring up, the advocation can be done through speech. It can be done through writing, which would be seditious libel. It can be done through an agreement, which would be the conspiracy. So these are the ways that you can actually commit the actus reus, through speaking, through writing, or through a conspiracy. We have a Sedition Act, which was updated in 2006, which says that any person who is guilty of sedition, and it lays out all the punishments of not more than, they should be fined or imprisoned not more than 20 years or both. So no one, and I want to note here that no one has ever been charged under this sedition law. We just haven't had anyone charged. So that's kind of really just what you really want to know is when you hear that word sedition, that you can think about advocating a violent overthrow of the government or stirring up, and that there's 3 ways that you could commit sedition. Speech, and this would largely want to, oftentimes this might be to like a big crowd or something like that, because you actually need to actually stir up and intend to stir up, or advocate the violent overthrow. Libel, which would be writing, or conspiracy, agreeing with a group of people. So because no one has ever been charged with it, we'll just go ahead and leave it here. I really just want you to know the definition. Our next crime is the crime of sabotage. So sabotage is damaging or destroying property for the purpose of hindering preparations for war and national defense during a national emergency. So this was defined in 2012 in the United States Code. If you want to look it up further, it's the Sabotage Act of 2012. So the actus reus here of sabotage is that you destroy or damage or obstruct or interfere with or contaminate or produce defective war or national defense property. So those are the elements of sabotage here. And as you can see, there's a lot of different ways that you could go about the actus reus. The mens rea is purposely obstruct or any of the other actions here. So purposely for all of the actus reuses, or knowingly commit any of these actus reuses, or even negligently commit these actus reuses. Circumstance time would be during war or other national emergency. And you have to be the cause, the factual and legal cause of the damaged or destroyed property. So if we were to think about a current hypothetical where, you know, I'm giving you this lecture from my house in the time of COVID-19, and so if a company who was making ventilators or masks purposely sabotaged or destroyed or produced defective equipment, that could be deemed sabotage. So there is a case of sabotage in your textbook on page 525, and it charged a group of individuals. They were sentenced to 35 months in prison, or one of them was, and then some of them were sentenced to 62 months in prison. And they were in Tennessee. It was an 82-year-old nun two U.S. Army veterans, aged 57 and 63, cut their way through 4 layers of fence and reached a building where the Department of Energy stores enriched uranium. And once they got into the building, they spray painted anti-war slogans, splashed blood, taped banners with biblical slogans, and sang hymns. The security guards finally came. They offered him bread and read aloud a prepared message. And so the question is, was that sabotaged? Their actions caused about $8,000 worth of damage. Eventually, the federal prosecutors charged them with trespassing and injuring government property. However, when they refused to accept a plea bargain, the prosecutor took that back and then charged them with sabotage. So the question is, was this sabotage? So it's a pretty interesting case, and the actors are not people that we normally think of. We don't normally think of like nuns committing crimes, let alone federal crime of sabotage. Okay, our next crime is espionage. In other words, espionage means spying. It's just a more formal way of saying spying. So when you see this word, you can substitute in spying, and you're going to be right on the right track. This is spying for the enemy. There are 2 different crimes. There's espionage during peace and espionage during war. The elements of espionage look at collecting, recording, or publishing, communicating, or attempting to elicit with a specific intent to communicate the information to the enemy. The circumstance element is that you are communicating information useful to an enemy during war, and that constitutes the crime of espionage. So we have an Espionage Act. It was originally put together in 1923. In 2009, it was re-upped. So there actually have been several people charged with espionage, including the most recent, who's pending, would be Edward Snowden. If he ever returns to the United States, he would face charges of espionage. Page 530 of your book has a list of people who've been charged in the more recent years, in the last 35 years from 1985 till now, with it and what happened to them, including Chelsea Manning, or Bradley Manning as he was known at the time he committed the act, Chelsea Manning at the time of the trial. So there's quite a few people in here who have been charged. Some of them have been convicted, some of them have not. So it's pretty interesting if you have a few extra minutes and you're interested in spying to see kind of what types of things these accused spies were actually communicating and who they were communicating it to. All right, the last part of this chapter deals with anti-terrorist crimes. These are all crimes from the United States Code in 2012. And terrorism is the use of violence or intimidation in pursuit of a political aim. So a lot of these crimes have their root in the Patriot Act, which was passed by Congress after September 11th. It created some new crimes and it enhanced penalties for other existing crimes. When we think about this, there are crimes like providing support and resources to terrorists and terrorist organizations. So this could be training, expert advice or assistance, service. There have been a few people who have been charged. Under these laws, there's Eric Holder from Barack Obama's presidency. So that administration charged the Humanitarian Law Project in 2010. That is in your book. An excerpt of that is in your book for you to look over. There is social media and how that can cross into support and resources. And we have an example in your book as well of United States versus Ashraf Abid Khan from 2014. And what he did, that's actually a fairly lengthy excerpt because he was charged with providing material support to the Islamic State of Iraq, ISIL. And so kind of how he went about doing that. All right. So as we focus on and we think about the test, what I really want you to know are the definitions. So if you understand the definitions, you should be in good shape moving forward. I hope you are well, and let me know if you have any questions.